The night pressed down on Guadalcanal like a weight. It was the kind of darkness that swallowed sound, that made the jungle feel alive and watchful. Every leaf seemed to listen. Every shadow seemed to breathe. Along the eastern bank of a narrow, slow-moving stretch of water the Americans called Alligator Creek, the men of the Imperial Japanese Army lay still, so still that even the insects moved around them as if they were part of the earth itself. Sweat ran down their faces and soaked their uniforms, but none of them shifted. None of them spoke. They had trained for this silence. They had been shaped by it. Colonel Kayaneo Ichiki moved slowly through the line, crouched low, his boots sinking into the damp soil. He paused now and then, placing a hand on a shoulder, offering a quiet word, a nod. His officers watched him with the same confidence they had carried across China and Southeast Asia. These men believed in victory the way they believed in the rising sun. 4 years, the Imperial Army had advanced, unstoppable, feared. They had taken cities, broken armies, and shattered resistance wherever they went. Tonight, they believed, would be no different. Across the creek, the Marines waited. Private Al Schmid sat behind his water-cooled Browning machine gun, his hand steady despite the tension that filled the air. He had checked the weapon so many times his fingers moved automatically now. The ammunition belt slid through his hands with a metallic whisper. Around him, other Marines watched the darkness, eyes fixed on the strip of sand that stretched between the two sides. They had dug deep. They had learned quickly. They had heard the stories, night attacks, sudden charges, enemies who did not stop even when wounded. But they had also built something new here. Overlapping fire. Registered artillery. Weapons placed not just to stop an attack, but to destroy it. The air smelled of mud, oil, and fear. Weeks earlier, when the Marines had landed on Guadalcanal, they had not known what they would face. The island had seemed almost abandoned. The unfinished airfield lay quiet under the tropical sun. But the withdrawal of the American Navy after the disaster at Savo Island had changed everything. Supplies were scarce. Ammunition had to be counted. Food rationed. The men had worked day and night to turn the captured airstrip into Henderson Field, because they knew it was the key. As long as aircraft could operate from it, the island could be held. Every day, Japanese bombers came. Every night, warships shelled the perimeter. And somewhere in the jungle, the enemy gathered. Ichiki had arrived with confidence. His orders had been clear: wait for reinforcements, gather strength, strike with overwhelming force. But patience had never been his nature. He had built his reputation on speed, aggression, and decisive action. He believed hesitation invited defeat. And when his patrol clashed with American scouts, when surprise slipped away, he made the decision that would shape the battle. He would attack. As the hours passed, tension tightened. The jungle remained silent. The creek flowed dark and slow. Clouds drifted across the moon. The Marines could feel something coming. They could sense it the way soldiers often do, in the quiet moments before violence. Then, sometime after midnight, a green flare rose into the sky. For a moment, the world turned pale and unreal. Shadows stretched long across the sand. The creek shimmered like glass. And from the darkness, the Japanese soldiers rose and ran. They came forward in waves, shouting, bayonets fixed, boots pounding against the sand. They had done this before. Shock, speed, courage. They believed these would carry them through. They believed the Americans would break. Instead, the night erupted. The 37mm gun fired first. The canister round tore into the charging ranks, a storm of steel that cut through men in an instant. Machine guns opened up in a roar that seemed endless. Tracers slashed the darkness. Rifles cracked in steady rhythm. The sandbar became a place of fire and death. Men fell. Some stumbled forward before collapsing. Others dropped instantly. The creek filled with bodies. Still more came. Schmid kept firing. The water jacket of his gun steamed in the humid air. Ammunition belts piled at his feet. His ears rang. His shoulder ached. But he did not stop. None of them stopped. Training and fear and survival fused into something mechanical and relentless. The first attack shattered. For a brief moment, silence returned. Smoke drifted. The wounded cried out. But across the creek, Ichiki reorganized his men. He believed the Americans were close to breaking. He had seen this before. One more push, one more wave. He ordered another assault. Again, the soldiers rose. Again, they charged. And again, they were cut down. Artillery joined the battle. Shells crashed into the jungle behind the attackers. The ground shook. Trees splintered. Fire lit the darkness. The Japanese assembly areas became chaos. But still, some tried to advance. Some crawled forward through the sand and water. Some reached the wire. Few made it past. Hours passed in this cycle of attack and destruction. Courage met preparation again, and again courage died. By dawn, the creek ran red. The Marines looked across a landscape transformed. Bodies lay everywhere. Equipment scattered. Smoke hung low. The sun rose over Guadalcanal, revealing the scale of the disaster. The myth of invincibility had cracked in the light. But the battle was not over. At first light, the Americans counterattacked. Tanks rolled forward, engines growling, crushing sand and debris beneath their tracks. Infantry followed. Artillery continued to fire. Aircraft from Henderson Field roared overhead. The combination was overwhelming. Japanese survivors fought with determination that shocked even their enemies. Some charged the tanks. Some hid and ambushed advancing Marines. Others refused to surrender, choosing death instead. The fighting became brutal and close. Grenades, bayonets, hand-to-hand struggle in the heat and smoke. By afternoon, resistance faded. The battlefield fell silent once more. The cost was staggering. Nearly the entire Japanese force had been destroyed. Only a handful survived. The Americans, though shaken, had held. Word spread quickly across the island and beyond. For the first time, Japanese ground forces had been decisively defeated in a major engagement. The psychological impact was enormous. Soldiers who had feared unstoppable attacks now believed they could win. Commanders began to study what had happened. Preparation, coordination, firepower, discipline, these had made the difference. For the Japanese, the lesson was harsh and painful. Yet the struggle for Guadalcanal had only begun. More reinforcements would come. More battles would be fought, bloody, exhausting, relentless. Jungle, heat, disease, and starvation would claim as many lives as bullets and shells. Night after night, the island would echo with gunfire and explosions. The sea around it would become a graveyard of ships. The sky would burn with dogfights and bombing raids. But the turning point had already taken shape in the minds of the men who survived that night. Among the Marines, confidence grew. They had faced the feared night attack and endured. They had seen that courage alone was not enough. Organization and preparation mattered. They learned to dig deeper, to coordinate more closely, to adapt faster. Among the Japanese, determination hardened, but doubt crept in. The enemy was stronger than expected. The war would not be quick. Every victory would cost dearly. In the weeks that followed, Henderson Field became the heart of the battle. Aircraft rose each morning, striking ships and troops. Supply lines became targets. The struggle turned into one of endurance. Who could hold longer? Who could feed their men? Who could replace losses? The island consumed both sides. Soldiers lived in mud. They fought malaria, dysentery, exhaustion. They watched friends disappear in the jungle or collapse from disease. Every night brought tension. Every dawn brought relief. Some remembered the sandbar, the green flare, the roar of machine guns. For Al Schmid, the battle would never truly end. The sound of the Browning, the endless firing, the faces in the darkness, these stayed with him. War left marks deeper than wounds. Many who survived Guadalcanal carried memories that never faded. The same was true for those on the other side. The survivors of Ichiki's detachment carried their own memories, of bravery, of loss, of a night when everything changed. History would remember the battle as the first major land defeat of Japanese forces. But for the men who fought it, it was something more personal. It was fear and noise and confusion. It was survival. And it was the beginning of a long road that would lead, step by step, toward the end of the war in the Pacific. The jungle closed again over the battlefield. The creek flowed as it always had. But beneath the soil, beneath the roots and stones, lay the evidence of that night, proof that wars are not decided only by courage or belief, but by preparation, adaptability, and the willingness to learn. Guadalcanal would go on for months. Thousands more would die. Ships would burn. Aircraft would fall. Armies would clash again and again. Yet in the early hours of that August morning, as the first light revealed the cost of one man's decision, the balance of the Pacific War had begun to shift. And far from the sandbar, in command rooms and war offices, leaders studied the reports. They saw the numbers. They read the accounts. They understood what had happened. The war would not be easy. It would not be quick. But it could be won.